Politics always leads to war, and politicians are generally loath to participate, so when I left my post as mayor to enlist, I wanted to show other people what to do. Instead of being sent to a desert war zone, I was sent to Poland. So much for heroically gallivanting off to bring pride to my hometown, but oh well. My first week there was very peaceful. No one here cared who I was just sent there to man our paranoia wall by Russia, and replace a fellow who ran off. After my second week there, as boredom was setting in, we found a young private, Whitefield, dead. 4 cuts and all the blood drained out of him. A formal investigation was launched. Everyone was on edge. No results ever came from the investigation. Then Wickers was found dead, same 4 cuts and no blood. Both of them were quite into paid company, so I got roped into helping some of the boys investigate the local whorehouses. There was a lot of them to be found. American men paid well apparently. No results came from it, but Jacobs, a boy from Wisconsin, took upon himself to personally visit the pimps to improve working conditions. He was killed in a jail cell, but at least he had defense wounds. There was a lockdown. We weren't given time to leave the base, but more people came up dead. When the natives started leaving town, we had to stay. Too many people in town had seen something, or had something done to them. It was a small town, but we were real unnerved. Natives could go somewhere else, but we were stuck. We set up guard shifts, and armed to the teeth we waited. After shifts were set up, things slowed down. We were scared shitless by things going bump in the night, but we didn't lose anyone else. Out of the 50 in our small base, 13 had died. We had spent all of our spare time wondering what the hell it could be. One guy, Shalt, put his money on Almasi, figured he was an Iranian spy. We ignored him. Old man Werther's bet it was a serial killer among us, got high on killing the locals and escalated to us. The last theory out there was fronted by Roger, who bet it was Russian commandos. Me, Werther's and Roger were on guard 2 nights when Werther's shushed us and asked, "Ya boys hear that?" We listened intently, and faintly heard someone screaming. Roger radioed it in, and we were sent out with Shalt and Almasi to check it out. We rode into town decked out. Werther's was the highest ranking, so he was given control of this outing. He told us carefully we're splitting into groups, me and Almasi, Davy and Shalt. Roger, you're staying with Carr, we'll radio you when we're coming back. We need to keep in touch, share locations. Someone approaches, don't be afraid to shoot. We set of, calling out and checking the buildings. Shalt didn't say much, just kept his barrel up. I was more casual, in case we ran into civilians. I was inspecting an abandoned storefront and radioing in when Shalt let loose. I called out toward Shalt, and he came running back my way sweating like a bullet. "What the hell did you shoot at?" I demanded. "I saw a shadow moving. Davy, we need to get the hell out of here." I looked at him incredulously and called in, "Roger, we got nothing. Shalt is shooting at shadows and soda cans. We're heading back your way, over." "Copy that, see you in a few." Roger replied. We were halfway there when we heard a scream across town. Roger was trying to hail Werther's and Almasi to no avail. I looked over at Shalt and said, "Buck the fuck up, or sit at the jeep." He stayed in the plaza with the jeep as I ran to Werther's last known position. I heard a familiar voice call for help, then gunshots. I ran towards them, and saw Almasi shooting something with his handgun. "Almasi, where the fuck is Werther's?" I shouted as I came close to him. He turned tail and said, "He's gone, Davy, we need to fucking go." I chased after him and didn't look back. We hightailed it the fuck out of there as fast as we could go. As Roger explained the situation to the man up top. "What the hell did you see out there, Almasi?" we asked. He took a moment to calm down and said, "I got tackled by something. Werther's shot it, and it dragged him somewhere. I couldn't find him, but then I heard Jacobs. He was standing there, or at least something that looked like him. I started shooting, and that's when Davy showed up." Shalt, who had remained silent, suddenly shouted, "Fucking bullshit. You killed him, you son of a bitch. I'm gonna make sure your filthy ass is locked up so you don't hurt any more of us." Before Almasi could deny it, Roger said, "Shut the hell up, Shalt. You stayed in the jeep like a bitch rather than go help Davy." We were silent as we rolled into base. We were questioned thoroughly, but ultimately we were sent to bed. We woke up to commotion. Werther's had shown up just before dawn. He was still being questioned when Roger came back from a search party sent out in the night, with Shalt and Werther's bodies. We went to alert the folks questioning Werther's in the command building to find 3 dead bodies, 4 cuts and drained of blood. Shalt and Werther's were nowhere to be found. With the people in charge dead, me and Almasi started to divvy out orders. Every man was on watch when Shalt showed up and started shooting. He had already taken out 3 of us before we could locate him. Werther's showed up from behind us. More people had come to shoot at Shalt, and he got through. He was on a rampage, gray hair stained red by the time I shot him 4 times in the head. He screamed after he fell down, and me and Almasi started taking the last of us to the command building, a small but very secure spot. Shalt was waiting for us. He stabbed Almasi in the gut and said told you. 2 guys tried to put him down, but no blood came out of him. Me and 2 others are in the building. There's more things other than Werthers and Shalt. Just now, a magically okay Almasi knocked on the door. From what we've seen through the reinforced windows, everyone who is dead is out there. We have enough food and water, but I think one of the 3 dead people on the floor started twitching. If you hear cries for help, don't come. My new life started a few years ago. My family died, and no one wants a young childless father. I was abandoned. Everyone in my life left when I needed them the most. Soon I was homeless, but that wasn't the worst part. I would still hear their voices, calling out to me. I would see my wife's visage out of the corner of my eye. Emotions are like fires, there's many different kinds of fires. Love is the fire that keeps you warm, keeps you going. Hate is a fire that's double-edged. The right amounts can forge a person into a much stronger thing. Too much and it ruins you. But loneliness is hellfire itself, it burns you until there's nothing left. Then it burns more until you are a husk of ash. I was a husk at the time. Panhandling for enough money for a 10-piece chicken nugget meal. So when I met Eve, I didn't much notice how important this day would be. I was grateful for the meal she bought for me, even more so for the hotel room that she paid for. Eve was interesting. She was a young woman, who married an eccentric middle-aged man and got wealthy for it. She always saw right through me. No bullshit I could come up with would stop her from seeing the truth, and it didn't take long for her to find out about what had happened to my family. I got to know her husband very well. He was a nice man, and the 2 of them took me in as a sort of butler. I was fine with it, and I wasn't tormented by ghosts for a short time. After being their butler for maybe a month I learned that not everything was what it seemed. The husband, Don, was both obsessed with relics, and an ancient god. He was also a prolific cheater. The only reason he married Eve was because she could help with his obsession. Apparently she had some connection to the god. Don soon began sending me on retrieval quests. My first job was to retrieve something from the Valley of Kings. I was given a handgun, a gas mask, a riot shield, some light scuba gear and a GoPro on my chest. I felt like a discount Indiana Jones. I found the place Don had told me to find, and entered. Being in a temple no one else has been to is surreal. Especially when it isn't to the gods its location worshipped. The temple glowed on its own, it was very odd. No need for a flashlight when everything is a luminescent blue. I walked up to the altar, and grabbed the relic, a ritual mask. As I picked up the mask I saw my wife and daughter, clear as day with their last moments of fear etched onto their faces. I raised my gun and shot at them out of fear. Then I noticed the walls weren't the only thing glowing blue. I woke up in the altar room, but my way back was far different. The steps I had walked up were now submerged in water. I got the scuba mask and tank on and made sure the mask was safely waterproofed, then I dove. The waters were beautiful in a terrifying way. I only had 30 minutes of oxygen, and there was no bottom to the now submerged corridor. Until I looked at my meter, which said I had only 15 minutes left. I hadn't used the tank at all, so I was confused. As I swam the lighting turned from an icy blue to a deep purple. I was almost out of oxygen when I saw the end of my submerged corridor. After I had gotten out and put my gear away I noticed something on the ceiling. 3 masks staring down from the ceiling. All 3 of them were red, and the paint surrounding them looked like tribal tattoos. I paid no mind and went about navigating my way between all of the pillars when I kicked a loose pebble and heard hissing. The masks were crawling off the ceiling in a very unnatural way. I tried to ignore it and speed up. Then one of the things dropped in front of me. It looked like a human, just on all 4s and with a devoid mask for a face. I shot it, and it flinched. I took my opportunity to get the hell out of there. Their screeches still follow me in my sleep. I think I could vaguely make out the word help in each scream. Needless to say I was pissed when I got back to Don. He had informed me of none of the things that would happen. When Don reviewed the footage from my GoPro he said it showed the same route going in as going out. I was unnerved by my sudden loss of time there. It was nearly a year until my next little quest. Don had done a good job of buying the needed relics. In that year Don and his worship of the god Turtla had gained quite a following. Because the relics we were finding could supposedly perform miracles. Even I was deeply enthralled by the promise of something great. The visitations by my family got worse. I would wake up to their voices. I would see them out of the corner of my eye. I would feel them behind me. Eventually I was sent to Greece, with 4 of Don's followers and Eve. We had to track down a Knights Templar hideout. Supposedly it contained the rest of the relics we needed. Jebediah, Don's right-hand man, had some intel on where to go. We wound up at some crone's house. She basically told us to fuck off. Jebediah, always one to push the envelope, started trying to strong-arm her. That old woman had some balls on her, and refused to budge, until her grandson came home. A knife can make people talk. It took us one day to get to the place. Eve stayed back for the run. It was incredibly difficult to find, and the entrance was hidden in the trunk of a tree. As we explored I noticed strange statues on the wall, armed with swords. I shook it off and made sure to keep up. I can remember every face on the team of 4 sent with me into that hideout. I only remember Jeb's name. One man, a young Asian boy, fell into a trap. A false floor had covered up a pit full of wooden stakes. He survived, but was stabbed at least a dozen times. His screams were almost as bad as the masked things. I saw my wife and daughter staring down the pit. I nearly fell over from shock. They disappeared with a loud pop. Jeb had shot the boy. We carried on, wary of traps. Eventually we made to the center of this underground maze. There was a wide room, and we entered it ready to find the last few things and maybe find some treasure. The 4 of us left definitely needed something good. That kid was a good person. I think he was the most honorable of us. He wanted to find the relics to convince Turtla to help end world hunger. I was snapped out of my moment of temporary shock when I saw my wife running towards me with a knife. I raised my gun and shot, screaming. She disappeared, and everyone gave me a strange look. I was shaking when Jeb asked, "Losing it there, John?" The condescension in his tone was tangible. I just looked at him angrily and we all went about our business. There were statues all throughout the room. One of them had a golden, gem-encrusted sword and the other 2 guys went to grab it. I was sweating with anxiety when the statue fell on those 2. There was no screams, just blood pooling out from beneath them. I cried for Jeb, stuttering, and he just said he didn't care. Jeb found the relics we needed, a sword and a chalice. We went to leave when I saw the masked things. "We need to go," I said to Jeb. "Why?" "Because you see some ghosts. Just shoot at them like last time." Texas read. Then his flashlight went out. I ran very fast after that. I wanted to get the fuck out, and I left Jeb behind. He made it out some time after me. He didn't have an insult when he left the tree entrance. The 3 of us went back to our headquarters, with everything ready for the ritual. I was prepared for a miracle. For my family back. The next day, all 42 of Don's followers, including me and Eve, were in his basement. Everything was set. Don was in this strange set of armor. A chopping block with a funnel for the chalice. A strange brazier in which an icy blue fire burned. The same shade I saw in the temple. Jeb had the mask on, and carried the sword. The only one not present was Eve. Until someone brought her out, tied up and gagged. I watched in silent horror as Don gave same sermon. I saw my wife and daughter waving at me from behind Jeb as I held down the bile from my stomach. I remember that scene perfectly. Jeb's long black hair flowing as he raised the sword, eyes glinting from behind the mask. Eve's stoic look of acceptance as she realized her fate. Don's look of maniacal glee, everyone else's look of sick anticipation. Then the sword cleanly fell and met no resistance. I beat him to death. While everyone else gasped in shock, Don fell to his knees. Nothing happened as one of the followers poured her blood into the fire. Then I broke the mask. The fire turned deep purple. Jeb was dead, a bloody mess on the floor. People screamed and ran. The ones closer to Don fell, clutching their chests. I left in tears, seeing the masked things attacking people. They didn't attack me, as if I was already dead, already one of them. Nothing related to any god happened. People died for a false idol. Eve left me a sum of money in her will, and that was the only notable thing to happen to me. Don and his inner circle were all poisoned. The authorities think it was Jeb, who I killed in self-defense, and no one else died. Eve left me a sum of money, and I bought a house and went to therapy. I have PTSD, and was experiencing a psychotic break. I got help, and my family doesn't follow me anymore. Their memories are put to rest. Now my new life is ending. I was recently diagnosed with a terminal disease. My house and money is going to charity. I have a feeling I'm going to die today, which is why I wrote out my experience. Don't chase after the ghosts of the past, or pray for a miracle to bring it back. You only have one shot, so make a future. I was running away from the darkness. Running in a maze from a dark oily abyss that wanted to suffocate me. I stopped running for a moment, only to hear the beast behind me. I couldn't bring myself to look at it, but I got up and started running again. Running like my life depended on it. Maybe it did, maybe it was already gone. I kept running through my dark hell of a labyrinth when I saw a door. It was a visceral red, and it made me uneasy, but it was better than facing the creature. I barged through the door to find myself in a dingy, dimly lit room. I stopped to catch my breath and look around. The room was thrashed, like 1,000 souls of the damned had tried to free themselves from hell here. There was a man sitting in a chair in the corner farthest from the weak lantern. He looked scuzzy, to say the least. Unkempt, unwashed and unshaven, yet exquisitely dressed. He had a long dark coat on. We stared at each other for a long moment before he cleared his throat before saying, "Well, you're here later than I expected." I didn't know what to do or say. His voice sounded low down, like what you would hear off of a common thug. I finally spoke up and asked, who are you? What are you doing here?" He chuckled for a while before he said sardonically, "Who am I? Why, you know who I am. I've visited you more times than both of us could count." I didn't say anything. This guy was a quack job. I started to think of a way out of here. After a while of silence, the scuzzy man shifted on his stool and said, "So you really don't remember anything, I guess that makes sense." He opened his jacket to reveal hundreds of bottles of an oily black substance. Then he said, "I make charitable donations. Give out hundreds of these things a day. And eventually it pays back, for me at least. You're a prime example of that." I quickly replied, "I don't know you. I haven't gotten anything from you." He started laughing like he had heard the funniest joke ever. After a minute of his disgusting laugh he said, "Do you know anything? You know me better than yourself. But you wouldn't know that, would you?" He looked up angrily and growled, "I won, you fucking idiot. It's over for you, I win." I started to back up as he started screaming violently, "I win, I win, I win." With each time he screamed it, the room shook. I kept backing up as the wall behind the man started to crumble. Then the beast that was chasing me burst through. It tackled me through the wall I was on, and suddenly I was falling. I was falling through the air, and after a few seconds it felt like I was suspended in midair. The thing had me by the throat. I could feel it constricting my breathing and killing me. I was going to die. Misery and regret filled, but I couldn't remember anything. I shouldn't be dying now, the scummy man shouldn't have won. I became aware of where I was after some undefinable amount of time. I was in a desert, and the thing was gone. I was wearing the man's jacket though. I lay on the ground struggling to get up, as the jacket and its oily substance weighed me down. I could still feel a ring on my throat, choking me, killing me. But I wanted to live, so I tried to crawl. The weight of the oil tried its best to stop me. But I wasn't going to let him win. I started crawling as negative intrusive thoughts filled my head. Until I looked and saw I was surrounded by shades and specters. Empty husks of the people they once were that called to me, "Give in, you are worthless, you chose this." I ignored the calls of the damned and tried to find life. Only dead sagebrush surrounded me and the shades, who were either a solid wall or following me. For weeks I crawled, or was it hours? My vision was fading in and out. The ring around my throat was becoming both more prominent as my body fought, and fading as my body lost. I wondered what had happened to me. What had that thing done to me? Time marched on as I crawled like the dog I was. My only company was the shades, whispering sweet blasphemies in my ear. Gentle encouragements to give up and accept it. To die. I crawled and accepted their words silently as I screamed my denial. I deserved this. I was one of the husks, they crawled with me. I couldn't help but begin to believe that this was the afterlife, my own personal hell, and that I wouldn't escape. I was no Orpheus. Finally, after eons of crawling, of me fading and dying, finally my arms and legs gave out beneath me. I lay down and decided to accept it, my death. Then I felt a presence, and with the last of my strength I rolled over. There was a man standing above me. He was casually dressed, with salt and pepper hair and beard. He had a bag slung over his shoulder, and seemed like a fatherly figure. He spoke in a soothing voice, "I'm sorry this has happened to you." I looked at him and asked, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" He smiled kindly and said, "I sell bottles of gold, my friend. Would you like to buy one?" I thought about it for a moment and spoke, with a ragged rasp, "I would love to, but I have nothing to pay you with." I felt my airway constrict more as the man chuckled and said, "Why, you're wearing your pay. But we haven't got much time now. It's your choice. Would you like to buy a bottle of gold?" I struggled through my failing airway but said, "Yes." He reached into his bag as he said, "Good, but be aware that it's not the gold you may think." I was falling again. I felt myself hit the carpeted ground of my room and wheezed in a breath. I patted around desperately trying to find the bottle of gold. And then my memories returned to me. But the suffocating weight was gone. I realized what I had nearly done when I looked up to the ceiling and saw that the rope to my noose had torn.